everybody, this is Hannah. This is my first food prep video, so just bear with me while we are working on angles and different types of shots. Currently, me and my husband have been working on meal prepping for the week ahead, and so I wanted to share our process with you, and so maybe it can help you kind of work on things. So this is the main portion of our kitchen, so both of us are going to be working, but I'm mostly probably going to be talking about the things that I am doing, since that is mostly what you can see. So I apologize that you can't really see what my husband is doing. He right now is working on a Riesling marinade, which has a lot of different herbs and Riesling, which is a white wine, and so he's just working on getting the marinade together. We will be putting the meat in the marinade later, but we wanted to get the marinade started and just kind of let the herbs soak in with the wine so that when the meat actually gets in there, you will really taste all that. If we put the meat in the wine right now, it would really only last about 2 days. I would not ever recommend leaving a marinade in there for more than 2 days. You probably, depending on what kind of cut of meat you're going to use, it would be really way too tender. And I know this from experience. We have done marinades where we used juice, and that especially breaks down your meat way too much, and the texture is just really funky. So right now I am working on some tomatoes and garlic, and I am leaving the garlic paper for the most part on the garlic because I'm going to put this in the oven and roast it with some salt. So I'm also going to get some other garlic ready and de-shelled. This is one of the things that's the most annoying. I know you could just buy it all minced up, or you could buy the cloves already out of the paper, but it's much cheaper this way. So on a day where I am working on meal prep, I just take a little bit of time and just get the garlic bulbs that I brought home from the store, and I just get them all in a mason jar, and so I keep them in there without the paper, and then when I need it I can just easily cut it. So that picture at the beginning is what you see me taking a picture of. I thought it would be nice to kind of get a couple of pictures of what we were working on, and so that you guys can kind of get an idea. So I'll share those on social media. If you want to follow me, I'll make sure I have some links on the end of this video, and in the information box I will make sure I link to the recipes that we made, or where you can find those recipes. We did use some recipes from some cookbooks that we have, and some of them are just adapted to recipes that we've used year after year. And the tomato sauce that I am making, so I'm also adding some red peppers in there, and that is a tomato sauce that I have been working on for years and years, and so I'll make sure I link to that so that you can read that on my blog. It's really super simple, but it just takes the day. I mean, you can do it in a couple of hours for sure, but I find that it tastes much better if you sit there, and you can always add meat to it if you wanted to, or not. So now I am cutting up some onions, and I'm going to cut up the onions for the tomato sauce, but then I'm going to also cut up more onion for some of the other things that we're going to be prepping for the day. And one of the things that I'm also going to be making, and I'll talk more about that when I get to that part, I made a tomatillo and green chili sauce, so I'm going to add some of this red onion. I think the recipe called for just plain white onion, but we prefer red onions, and if you're cooking it down, I don't really see much difference. They're a little bit... they have a little bit more stronger of a taste, I guess. So if you're wanting something sweeter, definitely you can substitute a white onion for a red onion. If you're going to do something raw, I don't really think red onions taste that great raw, but none of the stuff that I'm prepping today has raw onions in it. So, so I will say that. I believe my husband is still working on that marinade. There is quite a bit of herbs in that. So like I said, it's kind of hard to see what he is doing. You can kind of see him adding some stuff in the background, but that is one of the angles that I'm working on. So if you guys have a preference for a view that you like, just leave that in the comments below, because that can help me as we kind of work through. I thought that for the most part you could see a lot of what was going on, so I thought I'd just post this up and keep it, because I make this sauce all the time. I currently make sauce and then use that instead of use jarred sauce for the most part. Hardly ever do I use jarred sauce anymore. So I thought that this would be a good segue into what I do. For anyone who doesn't know me, I am very carb cautious or conscious about how I do that in our meals. We don't necessarily eat keto or low carb all the time, but I am very conscious about how many carbs that we are consuming. And I also, when I like to make things more homemade, or have more of a homemade feel to them. It doesn't always happen. I have 3 children, so sometimes when you're on the move or you're busy doing things, it's just easy to, cook up a box of macaroni and cheese for lunch for them or something like that. But for the most part, I am really trying to be conscious about that. And so I thought that that would be a nice, good thing to share, because I think many of us, we want to have a nice and healthy meal plan and idea, but then when we realize that all we're doing is eating healthy and we don't have this balance, it's really hard. And so I think when we can see other families who are balancing, having good foods and having something also maybe not as healthy, and as you can see, my husband is pouring us some drinks in the background. Those are alcoholic drinks. They're those the seltzer type ones with a little bit of alcohol in it. It's very little, but I like to add fruit to my drinks. It's just fun. So, I think a balance is really good to have in your day. And if you can see other families doing it and not feeling like you're giving up so much, then you're much more apt to live that lifestyle throughout. Also, a little bit of backstory, as I'm still cutting up these onions. They took forever to cut up. And let me tell you, those were strong onions. So one tip that I have that I will say is, if your onions are really, really strong, make sure you use a really sharp knife. That will help get your cuts a lot quicker. And also, if make sure you don't touch your eyes. I would think most people know this, but if you are using a sharp knife and you keep it clean and use cold water, that really helps cut back on the fumes that are up. Now, I have seen some people use goggles, if that's your thing, and that helps. Hey, So now I'm going to cut up some mushrooms. I am using these in my sauce. I like to add as much vegetables to my sauce as possible. So you're going to see me cut up a ton of veggies. I would say a lot of what goes in my fridge are vegetables and fruits. And I just find that if I can add them to things that we're already eating, like sauce or something like that, then it's not even about sneaking it into our meal, but it is about adding it to something that we're already going to eat, and it enhances the flavor, but then you also get the benefit of having vegetables. And I am cutting these up fairly small because I want them to be about the same size as the onions, and I want them to just kind of cook and get some caramelized flavor on it as it's cooking. So yeah, I don't mind mushrooms. I know that a lot of people don't. So if this is something that you don't like, if you don't care for the taste of mushrooms, then definitely don't add them. But they definitely give like a meaty flavor to your, an umami type of flavor to your sauce that you might not get if you didn't add it. So, and if really in the end, I don't think you taste mushrooms necessarily in the sauce. It's not like you're going to get a big chunk, and you're going to see I'm going to food process this part of my vegetables anyway. I have found that cutting them, like blending them, putting them in a blender or a food processor has really helped keep more of a smoother. I mean, you could definitely not do that. You could just skip that step when I get to it, but I am also going to cut up some zucchini, and this is going to go in there, and then I'm going to use some of the zucchini in, let's see, what else did I put it in? I think I may have put a little bit into the tomatillo sauce, but I'm not positive. I will have to remember that. So I have some containers off to the side. You might be able to see them, and I'm putting my vegetables in there. So I have quite a few different ones for different meals that we are going to have. So like I said, in this process of meal prepping, I am doing a lot of the cutting and the chopping, and this just helps separate for the different meals that we're going to have. So, you know, if my veggies are all cut up and set aside, then when I need them, they're just ready to go. I don't have to do that during the day. So what I am adding to my sauce right now is some anchovy paste. I just used a decent squeeze, and then I'm going to put the rest in the fridge. I just find that this gives it a little nice salty flavor. So I was just checking on my tomatoes. I want to make sure they don't burn, and I have them in a cast iron pan. So and I'm mixing that all around, and I'm going to add the mushrooms and the zucchini. Like I said, my sauce is very friendly with I've also added eggplant to my sauce before, and that tastes really yummy. I did not do that this time. I usually only do that when I have zucchini or like have eggplant. I don't just buy eggplant to eat. Unless I have a specific idea. But I'm going to use some of this in some tomato, or not tomato. I'm going to be making some soup next week, so I will be having that as part of the veggies that I'm cutting up. I'm also going to be cutting up veggies for I'm trying to remember all of the things that I did, because we are doing quite a bit of stuff. So when I buy stuff, and maybe I'll do a separate video on this if you guys are interested in it, and how I kind of plan for our meals and all that. And so anything that I cut extra, I will put in a bag or a container, and I like to stick, especially the stuff that I know I'm not going to use. So that was just leftover zucchini, and I put that in the freezer, and because I didn't need all of it, but I could use it later. You know, I could pull it out for another thing of sauce or some other meal that I'm making. I like to use zucchini in a lot of stuff. So it's an easy veggie to just kind of add in when you're adding tons of veggies. So I am adding tomato paste. I'm going to end up adding 2 cans to what I put in. I'm definitely not very specific. Like when I'm making sauce, I don't measure everything all out. So I think that that's one of the nice things about sauce that you don't have to do. So this pepper is going to be used for the soup, and then we are going to be making this week some Thai basil shrimp with fried rice. So I'm going to make sure that I have this pepper cut up for that. My husband later on is going to be cutting up some green bell pepper for that meal too. And also, while I'm doing all the stuff that I'm doing, I always like to keep my workspace clean. It's really hard to see what my husband is doing, but he is not as clean as I am, and I just find that it just helps keep me organized, and really it helps keep everything clean and without like having cross-contamination. I think sometimes it's easy to forget about that part. So I know that I usually don't mix my cutting board, so I have one cutting board that I use just for meat and one that I use for veggies. So just so that you know, I am mixing around my veggies with that tomato paste. I'm letting it get a little bit of color. I find that this really just kind of helps. Sometimes you have to turn down the burner to like more like medium so it doesn't burn, because you don't want it to burn, because you don't want that acrid taste, but you do want it to have color. I realized I just needed to add it. So I also have 2 cans of fire roasted diced tomatoes. This is going to be on top of those plum tomatoes that I put in there. Sometimes I mix plum tomatoes with like whatever tomatoes I have in my fridge. So sometimes I'll have more like just on the vine tomatoes. Sometimes I'll have some of the cherry tomatoes and I add those too. But this time, so as you can see, I am adding a little bit of that mix that I had of the veggies, and I still have some stuff in the pan. But I didn't want to overload this because I knew I had more than what was going to fit. So this is me pulsing it, and this is just going to help smooth it out a little bit. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but there's not going to be really big pieces of veggies. I know my kids, they hate it when there's really big pieces of onion, and they hate it when there's really big pieces of zucchini. They get really mad at me when there's bigger pieces. And this way I don't have to worry so much about having my knife cuts be really amazing. Yeah, I know how to cut things, but it takes a lot longer if you're going to cut it to look really pretty. And, yeah, I don't have time for that. I mean, I am a mom, and like I said, I'm a mom of 3. I have 3 amazing children. They are all under the age of 10. So they definitely keep me quite busy. So I'm taking the paper off now. I like to keep the paper on because it helps it not burn so much. And then it gets all nice and soft and yummy. So I added quite a lot of garlic. I am a garlic person. So now one thing that I do to my sauce, and you'll see this, I cut up the veggie or the herbs separate, but you could always put the herbs in when you blend it too if you didn't want them to be super chunky or big, if you're worried about that. I think that's just a preference thing. I'm going to add a little bit of water. A little bit of water doesn't really hurt at this point. And so, yeah, so there's 2 cans of diced tomatoes. I like the fire roasted ones, but I mean, really, it doesn't matter what kind you use. I've used all different kinds. Sometimes I can't find them when I'm shopping, and so I just pick out the regular ones. I find that sometimes if you can find the low sodium ones, that's a good place for this, because I do add salt to my sauce, but it's nice to be able to control the amount of salt that I'm adding myself. So, and also just so that you're aware, my husband is grating some carrots and daikon in the back. He's going to be making a pickled carrot and daikon mix we're gonna have banh mi's during the week, so he's doing that. So yeah, so that is getting all ready, and those because we're pickling them, those will last until we're ready. We're actually not going to be doing those until next week. So when I buy for 2 weeks at a time. So here I'm working on adding, I just added the thyme whole. You could add whatever kind of herbs that you like. I added parsley, basil, and thyme, but oregano would work really well too in this. And I just cut it up pretty fine. So yeah. But like I said, you could put this in the food processor too. It would work out just as well. So yeah, my husband is working on he also is working on, and I believe he already started it, he's working on some risotto, mushroom and leek risotto, so that we're going to do stuffed pork chops on the weekend. So he's working on the stuffing. We didn't stuff the pork chops at all yet. We will do that when we go to cook them. But having that part done, risotto takes a long time. So since we're in the kitchen and we're taking the time. So in a minute, you're going to see me not here for a little while. I had to run out and get some crushed tomatoes because that is one thing that I add to my sauce along with everything. And I didn't have any, even though I thought I did. So my husband is working on putting some bacon on a sheet tray, and this is going to go in the oven. I'm not sure what we put it on, but usually 350 or 375 is adequate. And we're going to have, one day this week, we're going to have BLTs. We got some nice big heirloom tomatoes. And so we're just cooking the bacon up ahead of time. I mean, you could definitely do this the day that you're cooking. But since we were cooking everything, we just figured we'd put that in there. And then he can take that to work with him during the week, and the bacon's already all done. So yes, so he's working on the mushroom risotto. I believe that's what he's doing, is putting that in. And like I said, we're going to put that right in the pork chop. I will make sure that when we make these meals, I will take some pictures of some of them so that I can share them on social media or on my blog, and you can check those out. I'm hoping to do more of these types of videos because I've always wanted to share a lot of the things that we make, and I have lots of friends in real life that are like, you need to share these recipes, or share what I'm making. We're a very foodie family, and we do like to cook, and that's one thing that we do together a lot is cook. So this is the pickling stuff, I believe, that he's making. And he's going to add rice wine vinegar and agave nectar and some other seasonings that you use for pickling. I will make sure, like I said, to leave information in the comment section below so that you can find these recipes. Quite a few of these recipes were from cookbooks and stuff. So yeah, he's flipping this and taking it out. I think he did 2 batches of this. Now, normally... And this is the difference between my husband and I. Normally, I would drain that bacon grease out to start fresh with a new batch, but he did not. In the end, he drained it, but I just prefer that. Now, if you were wanting something a little bit different, like say you were going to use these on a burger or something, you could always sprinkle a little bit of brown sugar on it, and that would give it more of a caramelized taste. One of the things that I love about our area is that we have a nice shop that has a good meat counter, and you can get fresh bacon, and it's pretty much the same price as if you went to the meat section and you got the crappy bacon. So we like the thick cut bacon, and in the oven it just bakes up pretty easily. So one of the things that my husband is doing that you can sort of see is he is taking a flavor packet. So this is one of the ways that I try to make it a little bit easier for myself sometimes, but I think eventually we want to get away from this just to have less processed food, is that there is a basil and Thai flavor packet thing, like marinade sauce. So you cook your meat in it, and then you add your vegetables and stuff. And that flavor packet he's going to use to put the shrimp in, because we're going to have that during the week. So we're just going to basically let the shrimp marinate in there for when we're using it. So now I'm back. It really wasn't too long, was it? And here I'm taking crushed tomatoes. I'm going to use 2 cans because I'm going to make a crap load of sauce. We are going to have pizza on the weekend. And so we'll just use some of that sauce. So we'll keep some of it in the fridge, and then the rest of it we will just put in the freezer, and then we will have it for later. Eventually I want to move to using jars so that it's just much easier. But right now, a lot of times I just take my sauce after it's cooled down and put it in freezer bags. It usually doesn't stay in my freezer that long. I will just say that when you're thawing it, you just have to remember that you have to thaw it decently. So like putting it in your sink with some cool water, the bag in the sink, that will help thaw it out so you can get it out. So I'm working on the green pepper, chili, and tomatillo sauce. So those things that you see me unwrapping right now are tomatillos. They are in the same family as huckleberries, I believe. And so they have that weird like paper layer. They get really sticky. So before I actually cut them up and added them to my pot that is behind the sauce, because that's just sitting there doing its thing right now, and that's going to sit there for quite a while still. I wanted them, they get kind of sticky, the tomatillo, so I like to rinse them off. Some of the stuff I rinse off when I get home from the store, and some of it I just wait until I'm going to cut it up and use. Anything like produce that we are not going to eat right away, I usually try not to cut up or wash until I know we're going to use it, just because I find that, especially like strawberries, they don't last if you cut them up. So you have to use them within a couple of days of cutting them up. And so this is how I help my produce last a lot longer, because we eat a lot of produce at our house. So that colander right there is just what I use to rinse off my tomatillos. And if you're really worried about stuff crap on it, I just use water and like vinegar. But you could definitely get like a vegetable wash too, that you know or that you trust that's safe. I find that water with a little bit of white vinegar works perfectly fine. I mean, I'm going to be cooking these, so anything essentially is really going to get cooked out, but you never know. So yeah. So I'm just going to cut these up into fours and just add them. They're going to cook and they're going to break down, and tomatillos are a little bit tart. I'm going to add some of the zest and then the juice of that lime to the tomatillo sauce. And this sauce is going to end up getting put in a jar. So one thing that that is going on, I'm trying to think. I'm not sure what my husband is working on. I think at this point he just has ended up working on a lot of little things. So yeah, I'm mostly doing majority of the work at this point. I think he's just kind of doing little odds and ends stuff that needs to happen. So I have this little juice squeezer. This is just for limes. I use it for lemons too, but I usually have to cut the lemons up. I should have thought to get a bigger one. It's been a lifesaver. I love how it squeezes out. I've had it for years and years. It is so handy. So I'll make sure that I add some salt. I'm going to be adding some honey to that. And I will also be adding some ginger. And actually, I use just ginger. I've used like whole ginger, but I had some of the already pre-grated ginger in our fridge. So I use that. And I'm trying to remember. I think I used some garlic too, and I used some pre-cut garlic that we already had in our fridge too, and I just use that for that. At this point I was not wanting to cut up garlic, but not that it would have mattered too much. So oh yeah, and I also added a little bit of white vinegar to that. So like I said, I'm going to say this again. I'm going to have a lot of links in below so that you can just find this stuff. In the end, overall, we did a ton of veggie prep, and then we prepped for 1, 2, 3, 4, about 5 meals, and then we just did a few other things. So we prepped for For the pork chops, we prepped for the BLTs what we could for the bacon part. We prepped for Thai basil and shrimp, or, we marinated the shrimp. And then we prepped for the veggies for the chicken soup. And I made the sauce, and then we marinated the chicken we had chicken and waffles during that week. And we just marinated the chicken, and that hasn't gotten done yet. Right now, my husband is adding all the pickling liquid to the jars for the Daikon pickles. And so we did that. We did the tomato sauce, the tomatillo and green chili sauce, and I will be making a rhubarb and strawberry chia seed jam. So that pretty much is mostly what we make. I will be making a video coming up in the next week or two where I talk about how I get ready for shopping, but then also how I get ready for our meal prep day, because we try to get decent amount of stuff done for various meals, and things like veggie prep is really easy to do. And even though I am a stay-at-home mom, I homeschool, and so a lot of our appointments and activities that have to do with that, or even just our schoolwork, I don't have a ton of time during the day all the time to sit and spend hours and hours for a meal. So if I can get stuff like veggies prepped ahead of time, it's really nice. And then I can just focus on just getting doing the rest of the work. So like the chicken and waffles, I still had to fry the chicken and then make the waffles, but that is a lot easier than having, chicken that isn't as flavorful, or like the soup, then all I have to do is just dump everything in the pot and then get it going. So at this point, I am getting everything ready for the strawberry and rhubarb jam. Rhubarb is in season right now, so I wanted to make the use out of that. I really love rhubarb. It's nice and tart, and it's going to go really good with strawberries, which are also starting to come into season. So I'm going to do a mix of 2 pounds of frozen strawberries and about 2 pounds of fresh strawberries. We had a big container of strawberries, so I will use some fresh, and you're going to see that I'm going to put the strawberries that I didn't use, I'm going to cut them up and we can just eat them throughout the week. They probably really won't last that long. So I did have a little bit of extra rhubarb left, because I got 3 really big stalks. A little bit goes a long way. And so some of it is going to go in the freezer, and then I can use that later in some kind of baking. Also, one of the ideas that I do cupcakes all the time. So if you guys are interested in lots of cupcake recipes and healthier cupcake recipes, because I am thinking carb conscious, when I make those, I have a really fun idea for some cupcakes to use with some of the leftover jam that didn't end up in jars, that I want to use up a little bit quicker. I am just going to apologize for loud dogs. If you hear my dogs in the background, we're getting a storm and they're just being not happy about that. I am cutting up these strawberries mostly in 4s. They don't really need to be cut up really fancy because they're just going to break down, and I'm going to add them to the food processor later. Both the tomatillo sauce and the jam are going to be added they're going to be processed in the food processor. So really how the cuts look isn't really that big of a deal. And I like things like that. I like things that are rustic and easy. And if I can add it to the food processor and you don't have to notice that it wasn't cut perfectly, that works great for me. I definitely know how to cut properly, but it's kind of a pain in the butt. And when you're trying to get it, there are times and places where that works, but yeah. So, for the jam, I'm going to be using a mix of honey, but then I'm going to also add a agave nectar. This is going to make it a little bit more carb friendly because agave is on the scale of the glycemic index. It helps your blood sugar not raise up as high. So I could have just used all agave, but I really like the taste of honey, and we have local honey that is amazing here. And so why not use that too? So I used a mix. You could definitely use sugar. You could use Splenda too, but having that liquidy sugar really helps because then you don't have to wait for it to dissolve. If I was going to add regular granulated sugar or even stevia or Splenda, you would want that to really dissolve in there before. I mean, it's going to get boiled. So one of the things that I'm showing my husband how to do right now is he is cutting some acorn squash because we are going to have squash with our pork chops. And so he's cutting them in slices, and I was just showing him how to cut the edge off of one of the sides so that when you lay it on your board, it's not rocking around and you don't cut yourself, because when you're cutting squash like that, you really don't want to. So I will try to make sure that I get in another video, I show you guys how to do that just on its own. Maybe I'll just do a small quick tutorial about how I do that, just because I think that makes it safe. And I mean, I hate cutting squash. They're a pain in the butt. But if you can do it, have some quick little hacks to make it easier and so you don't cut yourself, that's always better, right? So now I'm cutting some celery. I think I still have one more pepper that I needed to cut up. I believe most of this is going to end up going in for my soup that I will have for next week. So not everything that we are doing today is for the week, but most of it is. I just ended up cutting a lot more veggies because we had just went shopping. So when I shop for 2 weeks at a time because that's how we get paid, and it just makes more sense. But certain things like veggie prep, I can put them in the freezer or prep them and have them for the week. I mean, if it's certain stuff you're not going to want to cut, but peppers and onions and celery and carrots, really, you can cut them and they still last a decent amount of time. You just want to keep your eye on them. If you have those the things that take out all the air and package it, that is like awesome. I do not have one, but that also helps save to keep everything fresh, because when you're using a lot of fresh veggies and produce and meat, you don't want to have to worry about it going bad in your fridge, because who wants to throw all that stuff away? I mean, we already spend a ton of money on our food and stuff, so yeah. So I think right now my husband is taking that tomatillo sauce, and this is going to be used for tacos next week. So like I said, some of this stuff isn't just for this week. So we actually ended up doing a lot of stuff not for the week, but things like the tomatillo sauce and the pickled daikons and carrots, those could be made for next week. So, and that helps so that the carrots aren't funky as they sit in the fridge. I mean, 2 weeks, they're not going to be too funky, but yeah. So we put all this stuff into glass jars and sealed them properly. It actually really helps to put them in a hot water bath, just barely hot, like just boiling, and you leave them in there for about 20 seconds and then you take them out, and that helps create the seal. So we did that all after, so you're not going to see that process, but just be aware that if you don't do it that way, there is a chance that air gets into your jars and then they might not last. So, especially things that you like jam and sauces, you really want that good seal on there, and you want to make sure that you're doing things the right way so you don't end up sick. A foodborne illness is not necessarily the funnest thing in the world. So I am just peeling, and I'm going to cut up these carrots, and I'm cutting up a parsnip too. This is in the family of carrots, but it's kind of like a mix. It's a little bit lighter of a version than a carrot. So those are going to go into the soup. I wash them off after. So I like to wash my carrots off after I've peeled them. I don't know why. It just makes a little bit more sense to me, but whatever. You can wash them off whenever you want. And also, it's kind of hard to see, but I have that bowl right there. And that bowl is actually going to be used for composting. I have a garden outside. And so I stick stuff like coffee grounds and veggie and fruit type that are not cooked items in there. And so my produce basically, and coffee grounds and eggshells, and those go in there, and they go into off to the side, so they're not actually in my garden until I've tilled it in, but so it sits there and gets all nice and good. And then in the fall time, when I clear my garden out, I just lay that all out and put it in the garden, and it just helps keep my soil nice and fresh and good. So I will also try to make a video coming up of what how my garden is doing. Like I said, I have a garden that's not very big, but we have some tomatoes. I have a ton of lettuce this year, and some peas and green beans, and I'm going to be doing 2 zucchini plants this year, and then I have some rosemary in there too. So I believe, and I think I have some squash growing this year that ended up being from composting. So, which is kind of fun, right? When you end up with something. So now I'm getting ready to put my jam in once I get all my veggies for the soup. And this is just going to go in a Ziploc bag. I like to mark my Ziploc bag before I put everything in there, just so that I know what it is. And I write the date on there too, so that when I look in the fridge, I can see, oh yeah, this is when I put that in there. This is no longer good, or this is okay. That's just to be healthy. So I am going to be taking some chia seeds. This is going to help thicken it up. I believe I used like 1/3 of a cup. I could be wrong. I will be linking to a recipe that is similar to mine that I used as inspiration to make this. There's a lady on YouTube, the Toasted Pine Nut. She does a lot of healthy, fun, awesome stuff. And so she had a recipe for berry jam that used chia seeds. So it's not the same kind, but I will link to that so that you can see how she made hers. Mine is definitely a lot thinner than hers because strawberries and rhubarb break down really easily. So, and I will say from using the jam this week, it definitely isn't very chunky, and it probably could have used a little bit less liquid. So, I don't know if it necessarily needed to boil longer, but maybe if I had added more chia seeds, that would have helped. I don't know. Maybe over time in the fridge, like as it's in the fridge a lot longer, it will be better. I don't know. But that's the whole fun thing of about jam. So as you can see, I have this extra bit that is isn't going to fit in jars, and so that I'm going to use for a recipe for cupcakes. So stay tuned for that, because I'm excited. It's basically going to be a peanut butter and jelly cupcake. So, I mean, who doesn't like cupcakes, and who doesn't want to feel like a kid again? So I'm going to fill these up decently high, not all the way though. And then the lids are going to go on there. And like I said, later on, we put these in just a pot of boiling water. So that big pot, and we just filled it up halfway, and then we left it in there for about 20 to 30 seconds, and then we pulled it out. So that's just going to help keep it nice and safe. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will try to make some better angles for next time so you can see more of what's going on. And I hope that you look forward to seeing some more videos from me. Definitely check out the links below, and I will see you next time. And I hope you have a great and lovely week. Bye.